If avoidants were completely honest with you, here's what they would say. And I would know I'm an avoidant. I think the best way to go about this is to show you this graphic. I'm calling this my nesting thought graphic. The way it works is pretty simple. You have 5 circles, each nested in with one another, and they're getting smaller. Each individual circle is meant to represent a major thought that an avoidant would never want the world to know. Basically the kind of stuff they'd never say out loud. Now, I want you to notice how I've numbered each circle. Think of it like a turtle shell. Each circle is a protective layer. It's guarding a more vulnerable truth inside. So the outermost circle, well, sure, it's, a hidden thought, but honestly, it's something you could probably guess if you spent enough time around an avoidant. But as you move deeper toward the center, these thoughts become increasingly more private and increasingly more guarded until finally, at the very heart, you uncover the most vulnerable secrets, something an avoidant would literally rather bury forever than admit out loud. Now, each circle's job is simple: defend the truth beneath it at all costs. Because if the world ever got a glimpse of that innermost circle, it would change everything. It's speaking as an avoidant myself. That's exactly why I built the circle analogy visual thing this way. All right, so let's tackle that first circle. The thought it's protecting is, I just value my independence. I need space to be my best self. So this is the typical thing that you always hear from avoidants. I want independence. I want space, blah, blah, blah. Now, I've done the psychology behind this a zillion different times. In a nutshell, it's tied to their core wound, their need to have independence at all times. Now, I think the more valuable insight I can provide for this circle is to speak candidly about what happens to me when I get triggered. All right, so the thing that might shock you is that I use this thought, I need space to be my best self, as essentially a coping mechanism. So anytime life throws stress my way, work blows up or family drama starts boiling over or something, random triggers my anxiety, I don't open up about it. I retreat inward. I isolate. I shut down. I convince myself I don't need anyone else to deal with my problems. I mean, I can handle it alone, right? That's at least what I tell myself anyways. But deep down, I'm just really using independence as camouflage. It's a convenient cover-up so nobody sees me struggling because, needing space is socially acceptable, but needing help, it feels terrifying, and I'd rather suffer silently than admit vulnerability. At least that's what Circle 1 is designed to protect. But if this is just the surface layer, imagine what I'm guarding one level deeper. So the second circle is when things start really heating up. So this circle is the people always disappoint you eventually. I am just being realistic. Now the psychology behind this is actually pretty interesting. All right, so in the past videos, you've seen me talk about this die and how avoidants, they grow up with a rigged version. So you see early in life, avoidants basically learn through caregivers who are distant, inconsistent, or emotionally unavailable, that relying on people leads to disappointment. So again, every time they have a new interaction with people, it's like a roll of the die. Sometimes they'll get a high number, Sometimes they'll get a low number and they'll retreat to protect themselves. As a result, though, they subconsciously build an internal narrative to cope. If I never fully trust you, you can never fully hurt me. A few weeks ago, I had a video on my TikTok where I talk about this idea of defensive pessimism. It's basically a self-protective strategy where you assume negative outcomes ahead of time to shield yourself from potential pain. That's what's happening here. The avoidance logic goes a little something like this. If I expect disappointment and it doesn't happen, great. I'm pleasantly surprised. But if I expect disappointment and it does happen, well, at least I saw it coming. So they frame this behavior as being realistic, but really it's just an emotional insurance policy. It gives them permission to never fully attach because attachment means vulnerability and vulnerability means potential pain. Okay, so with circle 3, we're going to get the famous love doesn't last. It's better not to rely on anyone. This is where the avoidants grieve prematurely and abandon hope as a survival skill. I want to talk about Sisyphus for a moment. So Sisyphus was a king in Greek mythology known for his cleverness, but also for his deceitfulness and trickery. He was infamous for cheating death not once, but twice, by outsmarting the gods themselves. And because of his arrogance and his refusal to accept fate, the gods punished him with an eternal sentence. His punishment was to roll a massive boulder up a steep hill, only to have it roll back down every time he neared the top. No matter how many times he pushed it up, the boulder would just basically slip from his grasp and tumble down. And it would force him to start all over again for eternity. Now imagine the crushing weight of that task. It's a never-ending cycle of effort with no reward, no rest, and no victory. Sisyphus is literally trapped in a cruel, pointless routine. And avoidants think they experience love this way. They take this myth and they make it their emotional blueprint. They believe that no matter what they do, how much they try or they invest, love will inevitably fail, that every push will be met with loss and disappointment and abandonment. And the funny thing about this, though, is this isn't necessarily how love is. It's how avoidants force themselves to see love through the lens of their own fears and past pain. Because the alternative, believing love can last, feels too risky. But think about what Sisyphus's punishment really means. It's not just the endless struggle. It's the futility, the feeling that no matter what, the work will never stick. Avoidants carry that same feeling of futility in their hearts. They keep pushing emotional effort uphill, but expect it all to fall apart. We kind of covered this already with the whole defensive pessimism thing. The point is that all this expectation is exhausting. It drains them of hope, of trust, of a willingness to try, which essentially means they never get to see what it feels like to stand at the top for even just a moment. And so my personal take with Circle 3 is that it's this tragic space where love becomes a burden too heavy to carry, but not necessarily because love itself is doomed, but because they've chosen to believe it is. Kind of grim, right? Well, you haven't seen Circle 4 yet. This is where we get to really the self-loathing aspect of avoidance. If you really knew me, you'd leave. Real quick though, if this graphic and these circles feel familiar, like you're just watching the same cycle play out again and again, well, you're not alone. That's exactly why I created the Seiter Super Offer. It's a step-by-step program built from years of coaching people caught in avoidant loops. It's designed to help you break free and make avoidance regret leaving you. Now, inside, you'll get practical tools like live coaching and a supportive community designed to help you break free from this exhausting cycle so you can finally build relationships that feel safe, lasting, and real. Now, right now, there's a special 50% discount exclusively for viewers like you, making it easier than ever to join and start your journey. Now, if you're ready to stop spinning the wheel and start rewriting your story, simply click the link in the description below. All right, coming back to Circle 4. This is where the avoidant stops blaming the world and starts blaming themselves. It's a hard truth most people miss. The avoidant's greatest struggle isn't with others, it's that internal war. To understand this, let's go back to a story almost everyone knows. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You know I love story time. Dr. Jekyll is a man who lives a double life. On the surface, he's composed, he's respected, and really in control. But beneath that calm exterior lurks Mr. Hyde, a darker, wilder side full of impulses and emotions that frighten him. Jekyll spends his whole life trying to keep Mr. Hyde locked away because he fears what will happen if that side breaks free. This fear isn't just about how others will see him, it's also about how he sees himself. Though at the end of the book, all of his control unravels. Mr. Hyde doesn't just break free once, he takes over completely. Dr. Jekyll loses himself. The respectable man disappears, swallowed essentially by the darker, uncontrollable self he spent so long hiding. Avoidants live a similar internal story. They have their own Mr. Hyde inside, the chaotic, anxious, overwhelmed, and deeply vulnerable self that they keep hidden. This part of them feels like a threat, not just to their relationships, but to their very identity. It's not that they don't want to be known, it's that they're terrified that the real them is too much, too broken, too wild to be loved. And so, like Dr. Jekyll, they build these elaborate walls, they wear these elaborate masks, they have these elaborate defenses, and they try to keep that side hidden from the world, and often from themselves. I'm calling this process internal exile. It's basically the parts of themselves that get banished from their conscious awareness because they're deemed too painful or unacceptable. But of course, it wouldn't be a Chris Seiter video without a little iron. What often happens to an avoidant is the more they try to suppress this shadow, the more it controls them. Their own Mr. Hyde is waiting in the shadows, growing stronger and less acknowledged. And the closer someone gets, the more threatening that hidden side feels. Because intimacy risks unlocking the door to the part they're desperate to keep sealed. So that phrase, if you really knew me, you'd leave, it's not just a warning to others. It's a desperate plea to themselves. It's a way of saying, I'm too dangerous to love. It's their internal Mr. Hyde whispering, you can't love me if you really see what's inside. And that's why the avoidant's heart feels like a fortress. They don't want to keep people out, but they're terrified of losing control over the part of themselves that they've kept hidden away. All right, so what was it that I called the fifth circle? The avoidant's most vulnerable secret, something an avoidant would literally rather bury forever than admit out loud? I've appropriately named this circle the root rot. Think of this like the root of all things to their avoidant attachment. It's the one thing they don't want anyone ever to find out about them. When someone loves me, I feel disgusted because deep down, I don't think I deserve it. There's this really interesting article from Science Direct talking about disgust. And according to experts, disgust evolved as a protective action to foods that are contaminated or potentially toxic or fatal. So what does that have to do with avoidance? Well, I think what happens with avoidance is that they use disgust as a self-protection mechanism. The same way disgust evolved to protect us from potentially fatal foods, avoidants might have evolved their own little disgust mechanism that shows up when something threatens their self. So for avoidants, needing someone threatens their core self-image that they've spent so much time carefully building. The I'm independent, I don't need anyone, I'm in control. So when love floods in and that image cracks, disgust emerges as a way to reject the part of them that now feels vulnerable or weak. Here in the fifth circle, that disgust isn't just a feeling, it's a corrosive cycle, a kind of emotional Ouroboros. Now, the Ouroboros is an ancient symbol found across cultures, from Egyptian hieroglyphs to Greek philosophy to alchemical texts. It depicts either a serpent or a dragon that devours its own tail, forming a perfect circle. And this circle represents eternity, cycles, and the infinite nature of life and existence. So I chose that symbol for this circle because I think it's the perfect metaphor for an avoidant's internal emotional landscape. They are trapped in a loop where their need for connection is met with a simultaneous rejection of that need, like the serpent eating its own tail. They consume their capacity for love from within. Now, this cycle is both self-protective and self-destructive. It guards them from the pain of vulnerability, yet slowly erodes the very roots of their ability to trust and be loved. Now, here's the interesting part. Just as the Ouroboros illustrates endless renewal through destruction, avoidants face the challenge of breaking this cycle. Now, this isn't a Chris Seiter video with at least one mention of the avoidant death wheel. Now, just like the Ouroboros, the avoidant death wheel is a repeating pattern that keeps turning, starting from stage 1 and ending with stage 8. Each rotation drags the avoidant through familiar territory, distancing, shutting down, feeling regret, and then pulling away again. But unlike a random cycle, this turnover is piloted by something very intentional: the avoidant's desperate, endless need to stop devouring their own emotional foundation and to finally begin healing from within. Now, deep down, avoidants know the answer lies outside of themselves, in other relationships, in healthy connections that can dismantle the rot festering in that fifth circle. Yet they remain trapped, unable to escape their own self-sabotage. This wheel keeps spinning. The serpent keeps swallowing its tail, because breaking free means confronting the disgust and fear lodged deep in their core. And that's a process that feels impossible until they find the courage to trust again.